"She's probably just being dramatic again," my daughter said. Funny coming from the woman whose wedding I paid for, whose children I watched every summer, whose name was on a hand-lettered place card at my birthday table, but no one showed up. I didn't call, didn't ask. I just turned off the lights, and 4 days later, while they were still at sea, the land they laughed off as old dirt got a new name, mine, and mine alone. I spent 3 weeks preparing for my 65th birthday dinner. Every day I tweaked the menu, adjusting the herbs like I was feeding royalty. I soaked the rosemary in olive oil just like Elliot used to love, made the garlic roast with crusty edges that Emma always called crunchy beef, and set the table with the good china, the white set rimmed with gold leaf I'd only used 3 times in the last 20 years. Fresh lilies and soft blush roses scented the room like memory, the kind of memory that made the walls feel less lonely. I even made little place cards handwritten in gold ink Elliot, Meadow, Tommy and Emma, Ruth and Carl, just like I used to when the kids were small, and my name tag sat at the head of the table. 6:00 p.m. I lit the candles. They flickered softly, dancing in the crystal wine glasses, casting warm shadows on the faces in my head. The house was so quiet I could hear the second hand ticking on the mantel clock. The roast was resting. The cake, triple chocolate with espresso ganache, waited on the counter untouched. I glanced at my phone. No new messages. 6:15, nothing. 6:30. Maybe they were running late. I checked the text chain again. Our family group chat, Mom's birthday dinner, 6 p.m. House is ready. Meadow had replied with a thumbs up. Ruth had said, can't wait. Carl had even called to confirm. By 7:00, my heart felt like it was sitting in my throat. I called Elliot. Voicemail. Meadow. Straight to voicemail. Ruth didn't pick up either. That's when I noticed the roast had gone cold. At 7:26, I sat down at the head of the table, not because I believed they'd show up, but because my knees were tired from waiting. I looked out across the table at the perfect settings, the place cards untouched, the folded napkins, the candles burning low. They weren't coming. I told myself there had to be a good reason. Maybe Meadow had an emergency. Maybe Elliot had a last-minute case. Maybe Ruth had car trouble. Maybe. I wanted so badly to believe it. But then I opened Facebook. The first post made my stomach clench. Meadow in a wide-brimmed hat laughing beside Elliot on the deck of a cruise ship, the Mediterranean sparkling behind them. The caption read, "Family cruise surprise our first full getaway in years." Blessed I froze. Blinked. Scrolled again. A group photo, Tommy and Emma building sandcastles on a sunlit beach, Carl holding a margarita next to Ruth, everyone smiling, everyone but me. The photo had been posted just an hour ago, right around the time I had lit the last candle. Right around the time I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my navy blue dress. Elliot had once called it elegant. I had worn it just for tonight. A new message buzzed in. Elliot, sorry Mom, forgot to mention we're on a surprise trip this week. Meadow booked it last minute. Anyway, happy birthday, Hope. It's a great one. I stared at the screen like it was in another language. Forgot to mention a cruise. During my birthday week. They hadn't forgotten. They had excluded me, intentionally. I put the phone down slowly, carefully, as if it were a loaded weapon. I was afraid that if I squeezed it any harder, it would shatter. I stood up, blew out the candles, packed the roast into Tupperware, put the cake in the fridge. Each movement felt like I was wrapping up a scene in a play no one came to see. The silence in the room wasn't ordinary anymore. It was sacred. It was cruel. That night, I sat in bed and scrolled through the photos again. A whole vacation, smiling faces, sunny skies, plates of seafood, inside jokes in the captions. Not a single call, not a single thought. Not even a lie. And what made it worse, Ruth had helped me pick the flowers for tonight, just last week. She had stood in my kitchen and said lilies always make it feel like home. She knew. They all knew, and they went anyway. I wasn't just forgotten. I was erased. A deleted photo from the family album. The woman who raised them, who made holidays happen, who canceled vacations to babysit, who paid for Elliot's first law internship when no one else believed in him. The one who gave up her anniversary trip when Meadow needed help after her surgery. Gone. Just like that. They were living their best lives. And I was here, in a quiet house with cold roast and wax puddles, 65 years old, and suddenly, I felt like a ghost in my own home. But something inside me shifted that night. Not loud, not angry, just steady. If they could erase me, then I could disappear on my own terms, not out of bitterness, but out of survival. The morning after my birthday, I woke up to the scent of leftover roast and candle wax. It clung to the air like perfume that had turned sour. I didn't get out of bed right away. I just laid there, eyes open, watching the ceiling shift with the soft shadows of the blinds. There was no point rushing to start the day. No one was calling. No one was coming. At 9:14 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It was Ruth. A photo of the kids in front of a glittering buffet, fresh fruit pastries, and someone dressed as a pirate entertaining the children. No caption, no apology. She sent it as if I'd be thrilled to see it, as if I hadn't sat in my dining room for 2 hours last night waiting for them to knock. I didn't respond. By noon, I had washed all the china and put it away. The good glasses, too, folded the embroidered napkins. I wrapped each piece in tissue like I was burying something. My hands moved without needing direction. 65 years of habit, of service. I stood in front of the hall closet where the birthday banner was stored, one of those silly traditions we kept since the kids were small. Each year, I'd pull it out, even if only one person was visiting. This year, I had hung it above the window in the dining room. Gold letters that spelled out Happy Birthday, Mom still slightly glittered. I took it down, folded it once, twice, and then I placed it gently into the trash. Not because I was angry, but because I was done pretending. I checked Facebook again later that afternoon. Meadow had uploaded a video Elliot giving a toast at dinner. To family, he said, raising his glass for always showing up no matter where we are in the world. Everyone laughed. Ruth patted his back. Carl gave a thumbs up. And then Tommy shouted, "Except Grandma laughter." Actual laughter. Meadow tilted the camera away and said, "Oh, hush. She wouldn't have wanted to come anyway. She gets seasick, remember?" That one sentence hit harder than anything else. Because I had told Meadow once 15 years ago after a ferry ride to Bainbridge Island that I got a bit queasy on boats. And now that moment had become their justification. A single moment, a throwaway comment, turned into the foundation for erasing me from an entire family trip. They had rewritten the narrative. I wasn't left out, I had opted out. I wasn't forgotten, I was fussy, dramatic, fragile. By dinner, I couldn't eat. I poured myself a small glass of wine, sat on the porch, and watched the neighbor's dog chase birds across the lawn. And I let the glass go warm in my hand while the sun sank behind the trees. No one called that night. Not Elliot, not Meadow, not Ruth. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt quiet on purpose, like it had finally stopped holding its breath. I didn't cry. I had done enough of that over the years. What I felt now wasn't sadness. It was clarity. I remembered something I hadn't thought of in years. Meadow had once broken her arm on the jungle gym when she was 6. Elliot was 3, and I had to leave him at Ruth's house so I could spend the night at the hospital. Meadow clung to me the whole time, terrified. I hadn't even gone home for clean clothes. I'd slept in a chair next to her bed. And when the doctor walked in the next morning, she whispered, "Don't leave." And I didn't. Not then. Not ever. Not when she crashed her car at 17 and needed legal help. Not when she dropped out of college and wanted to find herself in Paris with my savings. Not when she divorced Jake and moved back in just for a few months that became a year. I showed up every time. And now she had taken my family, my entire legacy on a cruise, and toasted to togetherness without me. I looked down at my hands. These hands had braided hair, folded tiny socks cleaned up after chicken pox, and broken hearts. These hands had cooked thousands of meals, written notes for lunchboxes clapped at recitals, wiped tears in the dark. and now they sat still, because there was nothing left to hold on to. The next morning I made a list. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even emotional. It was just necessary. Cancel weekly grocery order. Pause birthday fund for Tommy and Emma. Delete recurring PayPal transfer to Meadow. Call attorney about estate plan revision. Block Family Cruise 2024 album from feed. Each task was a breath, a release, not revenge. Not yet. This wasn't about punishing them. It was about finding out who I was when I wasn't giving everything away. And for the first time in decades, I asked myself a dangerous question. What if I stopped waiting for them to see me? What if I just lived for me? I didn't know what that meant yet, but I knew it didn't mean sending another birthday card that would never get opened. It took 3 days before Elliot finally called. Not to apologize, not to ask if I was okay, but to ask if I could watch the kids next weekend. We just need a little time, he said breezily, as if the past week had never happened. Meadow and I are stretched thin. The cruise was, honestly, more stressful than it looked. I didn't say anything. He filled the silence like he always did. You know how Emma gets without her nap? I thought maybe you'd like some time with them. Time. They always assumed I had infinite time, like my life was just an empty room they could walk into whenever it suited them. I didn't yell. I didn't scold. I just said I have plans. A beat of silence. Yuhi laughed lightly, not cruel but confused. Since when? Since now? Since I sat alone on my 65th birthday and watched my family clink champagne glasses without me. Since I realized love, true love, doesn't forget you when it's convenient. I'm sorry, Elliot, I said. I can't help this weekend. He hung up faster than usual. No argument, no probing. Just a click. Like I'd closed a door he thought would always be open. That afternoon, I opened the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. It hadn't been touched in years. Inside were old photo albums, concert tickets, letters from friends I'd lost touch with. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue, a stack of brochures, art retreats for seniors. I had requested them 5 years ago, but never followed through. There was always a wedding to pay for, or a grandchild's orthodontics, or Ruth's emergency plumbing bill. But now the dates were open. My time was mine. I pinned one to the fridge. 3 weeks in Santa Fe. Painting, hiking, silence. No cell reception. I imagined myself there, alone. At first the thought frightened me. Then it began to feel like air, something I hadn't tasted in too long. The next week I stopped by the bank, sat down with the manager, a kind woman named Lacey, and started separating accounts. Meadow still had co-signing access on one of them. Elliot had been listed as a beneficiary on 2. Ruth was still on my house deed as a contingency from 1999, when we thought I might need medical help after that brief scare. I undid all of it, quietly, without ceremony. I didn't even tell them, because some exits don't need a speech, just a locked door. On the way home, I drove past the senior center. A flyer was posted on the window, Memoir Writing Group, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. I pulled into the lot. I didn't go inside, not yet, but I sat there engine off watching 2 women walk out laughing. One carried a binder, the other a cup of tea. I wondered what it would be like to write about your life, not because anyone asked, but because it mattered to you. Back home, the voicemail light blinked. 2 messages from Meadow, one from Ruth. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I microwaved a bowl of soup, curled into the couch with a blanket, and read the first chapter of a novel I bought 5 years ago, but never opened. And that night, as the wind brushed against the windows and my house stood wrapped in silence, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not loneliness, not resentment, but control. Real, unshakable control. Because this time, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I was choosing to see myself. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the call came. I'd just come back from the Memoir Writing Group. I'd signed up the week before, quietly not telling anyone. Just walked in, took a seat, and wrote my name on the paper tent, Loretta, no last name. That day we'd written about first betrayals. Most people told stories about childhood friends or missed birthdays. I wrote about the first time Meadow lied to me over something small and how I ignored it because she was just sensitive. How I trained myself to believe that love was silence, that sacrifice was maternal, that my place was behind the camera, not in front of it. I didn't read it aloud, but I didn't tear it up either. So when the phone rang, I was already raw, still sitting at the table, still wearing my coat, still clutching a pen like it anchored me to something real. "Mrs. Greer," a man's voice asked. "Yes, this is Anthony Rhodes. I'm a managing partner with Rhodes and Clearstone Realty. I hope this isn't a bad time." It was the kind of voice that made you sit up straighter, calm, deliberate, and vaguely expensive. "I'm calling regarding the Applewood Ridge property. You inherited partial title 5 years ago from your Aunt Thelma, but we've recently uncovered full ownership has defaulted to you due to the passing of the final co-owner." I blinked. Applewood Ridge. That old summer house, the one no one in the family cared about except me, the one Meadow mocked every time I mentioned fixing it up. "Yes," I said slowly. "I remember the property." "Well," he continued, "we've had 3 unsolicited offers this month. It seems the land has become quite valuable given the tech expansion in the area. But we'd advise against selling immediately. You could be sitting on something worth 7 figures within a year. 7 figures. He said it like he was talking about the weather. I swallowed hard. "Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. I'll look into it." After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Not because I was suddenly wealthy, but because of what it meant. This house, this forgotten, laughed-at, rotting cabin on a hillside was now a chess piece on a board I didn't know I still had access to. And it was mine. Fully mine. No co-signers. No Meadow. No Ruth. No Elliot. I pulled out the old photo album, the one with the curling edges and handwritten captions. There was a picture of me 19 barefoot on the Applewood Ridge porch, holding a sketch pad. Before kids. Before guilt. Before I became the person everyone expected me to be. I ran my fingers over that version of myself, like a relic. She looked fearless. Maybe she still existed. Later that evening, I poured a glass of red wine and sat at my desk. The house was quiet, just the hum of the heater and the soft clink of glass against wood. I opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, "The Woman They Forgot." It wasn't a memoir, not yet, but it was a beginning. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like an afterthought. I felt like a protagonist. It happened at the most unexpected place, Meadows Charity Gala. I hadn't planned on going. The invitation had arrived late, printed on thick cardstock with gold leaf lettering. No note, no message, just Mrs. Loretta Greer printed like an afterthought tucked between 300 other names. But I went. Not for Meadow, not for show. I went because I had nothing to hide anymore. And for once, I wanted to see them not from behind the lens of longing, but eye to eye. The event was held at the Parkmore Hotel downtown. Crystal chandeliers, women in floor-length gowns, waiters carrying champagne on silver trays. I wore the navy blue dress again, the same one from my birthday. This time, it felt like armor. I walked in alone, heads turned, not out of recognition but curiosity. I was a face they'd forgotten to track, a variable they hadn't calculated. Then I saw them. Meadow, Elliot, Ruth, Carl, all clustered near the front table. Meadow was mid-laugh, gesturing as photographers clicked around her. She wore red satin a little too tight, her diamond necklace catching every bit of the light. Elliot turned first. His eyes widened, then narrowed like he'd seen a ghost. I gave him a polite nod. No smile, no warmth, just presence. Then Meadow saw me. Her face froze. Just for a second. Then she recovered, flashing that PR perfect grin and gliding over like she owned the floor. "Mom," she said, her voice high-pitched and rehearsed. "I didn't think you made it. As if I were crashing some royal affair." "I did," I replied calmly. "Lovely venue," she faltered. "We didn't think you'd want to come. It's a bit last minute and You know, you've been quiet lately. I raised an eyebrow. Quiet. That's one word for it. Before she could respond, a man in a tailored gray suit approached. Late 40s, clean-shaven, unmistakably someone important. "Excuse me," he said to Meadow, then turned to me. "Mrs. Greer?" "Yes. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to thank you. That letter you submitted to the city council. It saved the Applewood Ridge zoning from demolition. You're the reason we were able to classify the area as a preservation site. My grandmother lived up there. You did something really important." I blinked. "Thank you," I managed. "That means a great deal." He extended his hand. "I'm Councilman Avery. We've actually included your name in the official recognition ceremony next month. We were hoping you'd accept." Behind him, Meadow looked like stone, unmoving, unblinking. "You're preserving the ridge?" she asked sharply. "Yes," the councilman said. "Mrs. Greer's documentation was impeccable. You should be very proud of your mother." Then he turned to me again. "Would you excuse me? I need to introduce you to a few folks. They're very eager to meet the woman behind the preservation." And just like that, I was escorted away. Not as someone's mother, not as someone's sister, not as an afterthought, but as Loretta Greer, a woman of voice, of impact, of legacy. From across the room, I caught Meadow watching. But this time, she was the outsider. The next morning, my doorbell rang. It was Ruth. No warning, no call. Just my sister standing on my porch in beige flats and guilt in her eyes. "I brought you tulips," she said awkwardly, holding a crumpled grocery store bouquet. "I wasn't sure if you still liked them." I stepped aside to let her in wordless. We sat at the kitchen table where the birthday cake had once waited untouched. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't pretend this was normal. Ruth stared at her hands. "Meadow told us you were traveling during your birthday. She said you wanted space, that you asked her not to tell us." I said nothing, because I wanted her to sit in that silence, in the lie. "I should have called," she added. "I should have checked." "Yes," I finally said. "You should have." She started crying. But I didn't move to comfort her, not like I used to, because I had comforted everyone my whole life. And no one had thought to hold me when the table was empty. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. I looked at her, not with anger, not anymore, just clarity. "You don't fix it. You live with it. Like I did." She left 20 minutes later, the tulips still on the table. I watched her drive away slower than usual, like the weight had finally caught up. That afternoon, I walked through the Applewood Ridge Trail. The sun dappled through the trees. Families wandered with strollers and laughter, and I smiled, because they didn't know me, and I didn't need them to. The plaque at the entrance had just been installed, in honor of Loretta Greer, who reminded us some roots are worth preserving. I touched the metal lightly. For years, I gave my love quietly through meals, through listening, through sacrifice. And they mistook my silence for absence. But I was always here. And now my voice lives in stone, in trails, in preservation. I'm no longer waiting for a seat at someone else's table. I built my own. And the people who sit there now, they remember, they show up. So tell me, have you ever been erased by your own family, only to rise quietly in a way they never expected? Tell us your story in the comments. Your silence may be someone else's turning point. Subscribe for more true stories of quiet revenge, emotional justice, and the power of being underestimated. Like if you believe silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Share this with someone who's finally choosing themselves.